Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gaining Experience, the show where we talk about tabletop RPGs. All of them today, because our subject for today is what's our topic, Howard?
Today we're going to talk about what we think are the best of role playing games. We're going to aim mostly for current ones, but what you couldn't you go out that's not Dungeons and Dragons and go play if you want to try something newer and different.
Exactly. My name's Corey. I am the host. I run the channel, and this is the RPG, the role playing guru, Howard. And for me, I see a lot of people trying to homebrew their D&D games to make it something that is not Dungeons and Dragons. It's a total reskinning of it to be like your favorite anime. There's a Naruto Dungeons and Dragons. If you can find that on the internet, it exists. But did you know that there are already anime role playing games that you can plug Naruto right into? Yeah, we're going to talk about that today. But first, we're gonna do a game called I Did Not See That Coming. And this is a game to loosen us up a bit and get our creative juices going. The premise of the game is one person states an RPG hook and another person puts a little twist at the end of it. I'll go first today, Howard. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
And if you're watching at home, feel free to comment. We love responding to comments. So my plot is we're gonna do superheroes. Green Arrow. We're just gonna say Green Arrow for the sake of it. Could be any vigilante, but
Any
Green
Robin
Arrow.
Hood styled vigilante.
Yes, Green Arrow has killed a senator, and the Justice League or the Avengers or whoever it is have tasked you and your group to go bring him in for questioning. And his villains but his villains seem to get in your way. What's the twist?
This sounds like it might actually be directly from the comics, but I'm not up on Green Arrow comics right now. But it does sound like an actual plot
Doesn't
from
it?
the
It sounds
comics.
pretty good.
So
I made it up out of whole cloth.
okay, all right. All right, so the twist for me has got to be something that's not like what is the obvious conclusion. I mean, if the bad guys are getting in your way, it seems like they're probably the ones that set him up. So I don't want to go that direction if we're twisting this. So if you want to make a twist for your players, um, I think that the twist is that the bad guys didn't set him up. I think it's going to be that the senator is alive, and the Green Arrow has faked his death to protect him.
Ah, I like that a lot. Yeah. And the villains are getting in your way because they think he's one of them now.
There you go.
I I have my own version of this, and where the twist is that all of the villains are actually from Earth 3, where all villains are heroes.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, that's where Ultraman's from, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, ready to switch it up then? My
Yeah.
turn.
Your turn.
Okay. Part of me wants to see if I can do something other than fantasy. I think I've always been on the fantasy one. So, well, we can go superhero themed. I like superhero stuff. All right. A ship of unknown design that does not look like it's man-made has landed in the middle of your city. Simultaneously, power is going out all over town. So the city has gone dark, and it's nighttime, so it's literally dark. The military is preparing, and your PCs. There are people trying to get in contact with you. They're having to do it old-fashioned way, driving around like using bullhorns to find you, and you know that the calls are being put out for the PCs to come together and aid us in our time of need against this alien threat. But
The PCs realize that the ship has a very sick alien in it that is siphoning power from the surrounding area in order to keep it alive and healthy.
Okay.
And it was made that way by an even greater threat.
So now you gotta help the ship and stop whatever else is coming. All right, cool. I like that.
If you have a better RPG twist, please put it in the comments. We'd love to see it. But it's on to our main show, right?
Sounds good to me.
So
So you want to start with fantasy? Since we are talking about what not to play when you're in the D&D mood.
when you're in the D&D mood, but you don't want to do D&D because there's a whole slew of reasons why you don't want to play in D&D. Maybe everybody at the table knows all of the monster stats and all of the game books, and you want to make sure that you're going to give them fresh challenges. Or maybe you think D&D isn't realistic enough. Because it's not. It's not realistic at all. It's very gamey. There's a host of reasons why you might not want to use Dungeons and Dragons. So, Howard, what is your pick for a fantasy RPG people may not have tried?
My pick actually is not currently in print, but you can still find on eBay and Amazon and other places. Is Iron Claw because it is totally different than Dungeons and
Wait,
Dragons.
Iron Claw
Yet,
isn't in print anymore?
I don't think so.
This is
I
the
could be
newest.
wrong.
This is the newest version of the book that I got off the internet.
Am I wrong? Is Iron Claw still around?
It's I assumed it was.
Um, what Sanguine Games? It looks like you can still buy copies of Iron Claw.
Yes.
Well, then, even better, it's still around. My books are old, so now we know, or now I know.
So please tell us about Iron Claw.
Well, yeah, the reason I picked that one is it still has a lot of your D&D feel. It has classes like the rogues and the warriors and such, and the holy people that with the healing. But as someone that grew up watching, Disney things like Chippendales, Rescue Rangers, and all those things, you kind of get into the idea of the anthropomorphic heroes. And in Iron Claw, that's what you're playing, and it very much looks like the Disney movie Robin Hood, with the one where he was a fox.
Yeah.
So that to me is a fun twist because it also adds in the ability to because you separate your stats and you say, okay, well, I want to be more focused on my racial heritage, which in this case would be your animal heritage, or my class abilities or whatever, and whichever one you're most focused on is what you're best at. So if you played a skunk rogue and you focused on being a skunk, you'd be better at sneaking people out. Where if you focus on being a rogue, you'd be more sneaky. And I really like that design. There are other games that use a similar design, although not necessarily anthropomorphic characters.
I actually own this book. I read through it. I think I got to run it once. You may be in that game. And one of the interesting aspects of it is your stats didn't raise by numbers. They raised by die class. So if you start it with a D, so you'd roll a D6 for your strength. But then if you raise that, you'd roll a D8 for your strength instead. And it would just continue to increase in die code until you got to D12. And then it would be like a D6 plus a D4. Or D12 plus a D4 or something like that.
Right, that's exactly right. And it was an interesting system. I liked it. It was unique and it was fun and it was definitely very original, but it still lets you tell fantasy stories.
There's also another version of this game for the Orient called Jade Claw.
I've seen that. I thought that was just a supplement. Is that its own game?
It had its own source book, I think. It wasn't just a supplemental book. It was you could play the entire game just using the Jade Claw book. But I'm sure
I never actually bought Jade Claw. I just saw it.
I'm sure they both interact with each other. So
what's your pick?
My pick for fantasy is going to be 7th Sea. This game has been around for a while. It's by John Wick. And he recently got the rights back to it and made another edition of the game, the 2nd edition. But
also, do not kill his dog. Different John Wick.
So this game is more of a storytelling game. Like you have stats. Excuse me. I'm sorry. You have stats, but each stat is just there to increase the story. Every time you do something, you're just telling your action as if you were the storyteller telling the story of how you're doing it. If that's not your bag, if you like more of a crunch, there are other versions of this game. The first edition had was a good balance between this heavy-handed storytelling of the second edition and a more crunchy like D&D kind of game. It was somewhere in the middle. And then there was Swashbuckling Adventures, which was 7th Sea as third edition Dungeons and Dragons. So they made an entire D&D version of 7th Sea. So
it's been a while since I played it, but something I remember from Seventh Sea that I do remember liking was when if you do something cool or role play well, the GM or DM would give you a chip, and then later on when you were down and out and you were like, I gotta make this roll, you could throw your chip in and it gave you a boost.
Yep, a
And
drama
I think
die.
the drama point
points.
or whatever it was, that helped a lot. I like
Drama
that.
points to dramatize your character. What was interesting about 7th Sea is it's not your standard fair fantasy. You're not going to be able to play elves or dwarves or things. Everybody's human, but you play like a faux Europe. Like you would play the Frenchman, or you would play the Englishman, or the German man, or the Russian. And while they weren't called Russians or Englishmen, they're exactly like them. And you kind of get to play that with your swaggering accent and show off in that way. I really love that. And they pull all of their fantasy stuff from the mythos of that culture.
I don't remember which came out first, but Elder Scrolls in video games does the same thing. Every culture, if you really look at it, it is actually just a mirror of a European culture, with the exception, of course, of the lizard and cat people and elves.
So let's move on to sci-fi. Science fiction.
All right, you want to go first this time?
Okay, I will go first this time. My pick for a great science fiction is Numenera. Oh God, it's so big. It's so okay. It's cutting off our heads. Let me shrink it down a little.
I don't have a YouTube open. I don't know what we're talking about.
I know. So Numenera is a game based on Arthur C. Clarke's quote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology would look like magic." So basically, all technology is magic. This is the Earth, millions on millions of years in the future, like in the hundreds of thousands. The sun should have engulfed the Earth by now, but it hasn't because something happened. The world's civilizations have come and gone in waves, and technology is built up and then forgotten, and built up and then forgotten again. Aliens have conquered the Earth and left. And all of these things are part of histories that no one remembers anymore. And now all of these artifacts just litter the landscape, waiting for adventurers to find new and interesting gadgets and things to play. There are hidden mysteries of the world to discover around every corner. You can have games where a computer controls the entire civilization, or you can have games where people ride in the sky in cities, or all the stuff that exists in fantasy can just happen with a technology backing to it. It's a really neat and interesting game, and it's my recommendation.
Sounds good. All right. For me, for sci-fi, I like the gritty realism, or not realism, but the gritty, future fantasy of Shadowrun, where orcs and elves come back. But
Shadowrun is not realistic at all. It's got orcs and elves.
Well, no, I meant I was saying gritty, and then realism was an accent. Unless I corrected myself.
What you want is cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk, but with some fantasy races thrown in. It's sort of like a Matrix-like future, but it's got the all your classic D&D races have come back, and they're being cyborged out, and the people that run through the streets and fight are called street samurai, and it's this crazy mix of the two genres that for me was a lot of fun. The only drawback to that game for me was the Decker system, not because I didn't like the idea of a guy who could hack into computers, but because the game would slow down as the game master had to focus on just what the Decker is doing because he had to go in his own little subplot.
So I haven't played this games for a long, long time, but I heard in the most recent editions that they fixed those types of problems.
Oh, have they? Good.
Yes, indeed they.
They
That's what I've heard.
they also did something similar to Iron Claw in that during character creation you would pick these parts of your character that were most important to you that you wanted to roleplay the most, and you would allot the most points to that, be it your race or your class or whatever. The amount of tech you put in yourself, in wherever you allot your points, that's they're going to be the thing that you're the best at. And I like that. I really like that concept of stylizing your character at the beginning.
So I think like a lot of people probably know about Shadowrun, because there's lots of very popular video games that have been made in the world,
That's
and
true.
Will Smith made a movie that is very Shadowrunny. It was called Bright on Netflix.
Right. It wasn't very popular. It did not do well, but it was a fun movie.
I
I
enjoyed
enjoyed
it.
it.
Yeah, I like that movie.
I thought it was
There
hilarious.
were flaws in it, certainly,
It
but it was a fun movie.
was.
The people who criticize it for its like heavy handedness, or like people over criticize that movie for a Netflix movie. I didn't get that.
Well, people like to complain. So
Heroes,
move on to superheroes,
superheroes.
since we talked about heroes in our intro anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a
for
very
superhero
popular
role
genre.
playing games,
Excuse me.
I said for superhero role playing games, my favorite is the hero system. Hero system and also GURPS both allow you to just completely create your character. I like hero system. I think it's more refined
Oh,
as
I got
far
the
as.
wrong graphic here. I put up Heroes Unlimited Second Edition from Palladium.
No, I said hero system and champions.
Well, this is very wrong. Well, let me get rid of this graphic here.
Yeah, I told you
We're
to
talking
check
about
that one.
champions.
Yeah, champions.
I'll try and find a graphic for that real quick. You talk about it.
Anyway, all right. So hero system, not the other one. The other one is outdated. And although I found out today they still make those, but hero system allows you to craft whatever hero you want. You can imagine any power, and then you can go into their power section and figure out how to build that power and make your character do whatever you can pretty much imagine. And on top of that, it has a good way to show how that will interact with other people's powers and how everything works. It's a little math intensive, so some people aren't big on it. But I really enjoyed it, and I've seen some pretty impressive characters come out of that game.
There we go. There's the Champions book. Oh my god. This version of the Champions book is written by Aaron Alston, who
I
is
don't know that guy. Do you know this person?
yes, I do. In fact,
Really?
he's written a whole bunch of stuff like in the Mystara world, in like Wrath of the Immortals. He wrote that.
Oh wow. Okay, cool.
Also, if you like Star Wars, he wrote a bunch of books in the X-Wing series.
All right. Well, I was not aware of that.
My pick for a superhero book is Mutants and Masterminds. It is basically D&D superheroes. It's the D20 rules with superheroes, but I know that sounds like it's bad and we shouldn't that those two things shouldn't exist, but they made it work really well. I mean, the level they basically took out levels and allowed you to just uh, 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 make your character really how you want it to make it, and depending on how powerful your character was basically its power level. But it really worked out really well, and they made a DC Universe version of this game, and my God, did I enjoy the hell out of playing that thing. Um, I give it a look if you like superheroes. If like Champions is really complex. GURPS is really complex when it comes to making these superheroes. Mutants and Masterminds makes it easy and accessible. I If you want a simpler superhero game, check it out. Definitely.
All right. So after superheroes, we're going to talk about the best of the discontinued.
Yeah, there are a lot of discontinued games out there, and a lot of them are great. And if you can find them and pick them up, I definitely say that these couple ones you should give a try to. The first one is Big Eye Small Mouth. It is the anime role playing game. You can plug any anime into it. They actually made supplements for a few animes like Sailor Moon. If you ever wanted to play Sailor Moon, there is a Sailor Moon role playing game using the Big Eye Small Mouth rules. This is the third edition. I like third edition, but it's super expensive. The copies go for hundreds of dollars. You can find second edition and first edition for much better prices. I would go with second edition. Second edition is solid. It's a solid book. It's made with the GOO system, Guardians of Order, the Tristat system. It's got like a whole bunch of names on it. I don't know why. I did a mecha game with it once, and I had a lot of fun with that mecha game. Howard was in that mecha game.
It was.
But the Tristat system was also used for a couple different things that the game company was trying to do. One was Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. Who makes a role-playing game based on one movie? Very interesting. But the one I want to talk about is Hong Kong Action Theater. I have this game on my shelf and I want to play it. How it works is you don't play the karate chopping hero. You play an actor. You play Jackie Chan or Jet Li. And while you have all of the martial arts skills because you practice them all the time, you're trying to get starring roles in these movies, and every player has star power, which they can use to bid on roles in the movie. So you can bid on the main character, the partner who dies, or the brother who dies, or the love interest, or any role you want. And depending on how well you fulfill that role in the movie, and the movie is the game that you play, depends on how much star power you get for the next movie.
That's odd. I
I
have never
love it
played this
so
game.
much. So you get like your actor stats, and then you get like special abilities of your character that you can do in this movie as well.
Hmm.
And those change from movie to movie. It's so bonkers and fun and just a weird concept that I'm totally tickled about. Unfortunately,
Okay.
it's discontinued. So check eBay.
All right. Well, my favorite discontinued game is the original Star Wars role playing game, which was put out by Weston Games. It's a D6 system. And it was the one, a lot of the stuff that they put into that role playing game became things that became canon later and used in later Star Wars movies and books. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the game was great. It does something that is a little backwards to the way most people are used to making characters and role playing, in that usually you start writing up your character, you roll your dice, whatever, you figure out your stats, you start working on your backstory. With that game, they gave you archetypes that were super basic. Like, I mean, if you've most of us have seen Star Wars, I'm hoping, and you say, all right, I'm going to be some farm boy from a backwoods planet, or I'm going to be a smuggler with a price on his head, and you probably know who those two characters would be. But that's it. That's what you start with, and then you have a character sheet, and you start role playing, and you start doing things. And as you accomplish missions and get through sessions, you get XP, and you build your character, and your story starts from the basic. And instead of having a complex background, you have a complex future. And then if you want to add things into your background later, maybe you discover them or maybe you bring them up in conversation. And it's sort of like you get to meet your character after game starts. You don't spend all day making your character.
Another thing that's great about this game, like you said, a lot of the lore that started in this role playing game made it to the to movies. Like Rogue One starts out in that giant like prison transport. Imperial
Yep.
Juggernaut came out in the Imperial Sourcebook from this edition. These books came out in that time where nobody cared about Star Wars, the late 80s. Nobody cared. And because of these books, I give credit to these books as the resurgent of the Star Wars fandom. Uh, Timothy Zahn, who created the books that kind of catapulted Star Wars back into the limelight, used these books to research Star Wars and the world. And his books are so good because these books are so good.
And he is the guy who created the blue-skinned alien race of the Chiss, of which Grand Admiral Thrawn is one, and that character is now currently canon in Star
Disney
Wars
canon.
Rebels.
Yeah, Disney canon.
So there you go. That it all ties back to these books, and also these books specifically, if you do the research, are where D&D Fifth Edition got its inspiration point from. It was originally the Force Point before it was in Seven Seas a drama
This
point.
game had so many great ideas. It's so wonderful. It's still being played everywhere today. You can find people playing this game in every city. It's wonderful. Go get it. So it's time for the best of the rest. There's a lot of different genres out there. There's horror, like noir. There's comedy games. There's all sorts of games that really don't. They're not big enough to have their own genre for role playing games. I guess you could make you could make uh, an argument for horror, but we're just gonna put that in with best of the rest. So
All
Howard,
right.
what's your best of the rest game?
I'm probably going to go with Dread. Dread is a horror game.
I
There's
hope
a
you're
lot
gonna
of
go with
suspense.
Dread because that's the graphic I have.
Aha. Well, we got this one right. So yeah, it's a horror game that builds a lot of suspense. The very unique factor to Dread is instead of dice, you use they say block tower, but initially it's Jenga. They just can't officially say Jenga, but you're playing Jenga when your turn comes around and you're explaining what you do. And if you pull the thing and the tower falls, things are going to go wrong for your character. You're going to get killed. There are ways in the game to like not help with what's going on, and then the guy next to you has to pull two blocks. So you basically combined role playing with the fun party game of Jenga, and because you're playing in a horror situation, the added suspense of because you're under stress when you're pulling those blocks in real life, so that creates an additional level of suspense that just makes the game more fun. And I would love to get more involved in that game.
So I had a question. Do you get more successes if you like pull from the bottom of the Jenga tower than the top of the Jenga tower, or
I
like?
don't believe it ever specified you had to go from the bottom. I mean, I think the Jenga rule is you can't pull from the top three, uh,
Well,
but
I'm just saying,
beyond that,
like, if you have to do a particularly tricky pull, do you get a higher grade of success on your action?
not no, but that's a Jenga tactic is to pull from the bottom or pull one that looks like an important support block. Because if you successfully do it, the next guy's going to have an even shakier tower. So that's still a valid tactic in the
Are
game.
are you here? Here's another question. Does every player have their own Jenga tower, or is everybody pulling from the same one? And if so,
Same tower,
are you messing with another player? Is that the name of the game to mess with your fellow
not
man?
necessarily, but you might want to mess with the other player if he just took a pass and made you draw two. You might when you get a chance want to screw that guy back. Be like, you know what? Uh, Bobby didn't help when we were being attacked by the big giant spiders. He made me like save everybody. That jerk! I was like trying to get the door open, get the weapons out. He was cowering in the corner trying to save himself.
Oh shit!
And
We gotta go. We gotta wrap this up soon. This is getting time, man. Oh
all
geez,
right, all right.
my best of the rest is Paranoia. This game is a hilarious comedy game about a dystopian future where a computer controls everything, and you are the troubleshooters trying to solve the computer's problems. Unfortunately, you don't like the computer. Nobody likes the computer. The computer is a dictator. you have 5 clones, and if you don't follow the computer's orders, she will activate a clone early, meaning you die and the clone replaces you. So basically, you have 5 lives in the game. Everybody's part of a secret society, a different secret society, trying to undermine the computer. If the computer finds out you're in the secret society, you die. Also, during every single one of your missions, you have to test out a new piece of interesting technology for the computer that will obviously malfunction and try and kill everybody in the party. This is an insanely fun game. I suggest everybody go out and get it and play it if you want to have a rip-roaring fun time.
All right. I've never gotten to play that game, but it did always sound fun. So, back of the book.
No, let's do our overall favorites. I got time. Do you got time?
Oh, I'm fine.
We'll do our overall favorites. Yours first. Let's go.
All right. For me, my overall favorite is the same as the discontinued Star Wars. It's the D6 system from West End Games because they also made other genres. Obviously, they made space when they lost the Star Wars license. But there's also adventure, which is kind of like your more modern themed or game that takes place here on Earth after a time when cars are a thing. Then there is fantasy, which is your D&D style or genre game. And the upside of that is it has that same feel to it where you make your character from an archetype and then you move forward. It's skill based, not level based, and you can just start playing immediately. And I really enjoy that system.
You're really a fan of universal systems, I've noticed. You like the hero system, you like the D6 system, you like GURPS. It's just systems for you, systems of rules.
It's not just systems; it's the ability to create my own character and not be pigeonholed. And even in D6, where it gives you an archetype, you can go anywhere you want with it because it's skill based and not level based. You're not stuck into a weird class.
My overall favorite is something that I'm really having fun with right now, and that is the Legend of the Five Rings game by Fantasy Flight. I think earlier versions were a little better, but Fantasy Flight does a couple things that are super interesting, including the strife rules, which, yeah, it makes you think about how you want to play your character. If you want, if, Everybody's always gung ho, but sometimes you have to be timid and take a step back, and the strife system makes you hesitate sometimes. I really enjoy that. So, and of course, The Legend of the Five Rings is a Japanese fantasy game. And if you're really into Japanese culture, you're a weeaboo or whatever. Like I got my Japanese Spider-Man shirt right here. I enjoy the culture and the history and the feudal era of that time period. So I have a blast playing it. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I do a live stream every Saturday where we play Legend of the Five Rings, and you can check it out and see how we play it. So
Okay.
every episode, at the end of the episode, we do the back of the book. This is a segment where we talk about stuff you may not have known about in RPGs, or things that we just find are interesting, cool, funny, quirky, all that kind of stuff. And Howard, you have our back of the book today, so take it away.
All right. For me, one of the silliest role playing games out there was based on Watership Down, and it was originally used a system very similar to D&D, and it was called Bunnies and Burrows. It's been redone, I think, by GURPS, and I understand there's currently like not a GoFundMe, what's it? Kickstarter. There's a Kickstarter to bring it back again. Bunnies and Burrows. You can role play the plight of a rabbit just looking to get a new hole for him and his fellow rabbits. And it even has the weird, if you don't know if anyone's actually read Watership Down or seen the old movie or the new one on Netflix, there's a one rabbit who has visions of the future. You can be that weird prophetic rabbit, or you can play the warrior bunny, or the, I mean, it's almost like it's broken down into D&D style classes, but
Like
you're a rabbit.
like a frat boy on party night, you're just looking for a hole. That's what's happening.
I don't know him.
All right, guys. Yeah, Bunnies and Burrows has a new edition out. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out. Otherwise, hey, Remember, there's no level cap on life, so never stop gaining experience. Goodbye.